Hi everyone, today we're going to start with the first rule of multiplying powers. You don't have to memorize anything if you're able to understand what the words mean. So the first rule or property is the product of powers. Product means the answer of multiplication. So you're multiplying two things, the answer is called a product. Powers means numbers written in a base. The 3 is the base in this case because it's the factor that's being repeated with an exponent of 2, and the exponent will tell you how many times the base is repeated. And property means rule. So by the end of the lesson, you will be coming up with a rule that you can use to multiply two powers. So look at the first example. 2 to the power of 4 times 2 to the power of 2. Those are two powers, and I need to find the answer of multiplication, which is called the product. For me to do that, let's start with repeated multiplication because exponent is repeated multiplication. 2 to the power of 4 means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. That's the 2 repeated 4 times. But then I'm multiplying it by 2 to the power of 2. Here's another 2 and a 2 because that's the 2 to the power of 2 and that's the 2 to the power of 4. Now write your answer as a power. That means I need a base and exponent. If you notice, the factor that's being repeated is 2. And the exponent, which tells you how many times the base is repeated, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We'll talk about evaluating later. Let's try one more example where you have variables because the rule has to work for numbers and variables at the same time. X to the power of 3 times x to the power of 2. This is a power times another power, finding the product of those two powers. Let's use repeated multiplication again. X to the power of 3 means x times x times x. And x to the power of 2 means x times x. Now write the answer as a power. That means I need to see a base and an exponent. The base is x, which is the factor that's being repeated. And the exponent is how many times the base is repeated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times. Now let's see what happened to the exponents. You started with 4 and 2, you end up with 6. You started with 3 and 2, you end up with 5. So what happened to the exponents? You added them. 4 plus 2 equals 6, and that's the new exponent. 3 plus 2 is 5, and that's the new exponent. So the product of powers property states, if you have a base to the exponent of m, so that's a power, multiplied by the same base and an exponent. So you have this power times this power. They have the same base. You keep the base the same, and you add the exponent m plus n. So that's the rule that you're going to be using to multiply two powers and find the product. Let's try this with a couple different examples. We have negative 5 times negative 5 to the power of 2. Instead of doing the repeated multiplication, let's just use the rules. And the rule says, if you have the same base, you add the exponent. Now look at the first one, negative 5 to the power of 1. That means it's repeating one time. And this is negative 5 to the power of 2, so the answer is negative 5 to the power of 1 plus 2 equals negative 5 to the power of 3. That's writing the number as a power. So if the question is asking you to leave the answer as a power, you leave it as a power. If it's asking you to evaluate, that means you really need to find what negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 equals, and that gives you negative 125. And that's to evaluate, and that's to leave as a power. Now let's try it with a fraction. What if you have negative half to the power of 3 times negative half to the power of 3. The base is negative half, which is a fraction. Keep it the same and add the exponent. Negative half to the power of 3 plus 3, which gives you negative half to the power of 6. If I'm asking you to evaluate, then you have to find the value of 2 to the power of 6 and the 1 to the power of 6, but it's a negative. Negative half to the power of 6 gives you 1 over 64, which is positive because 2 to the power 6 is 64, and negative 1 to the power 6 is positive 1 because it's an even number. So you can use the rule from now on instead of repeated multiplication. And that's the first product of powers property. The next 2 lessons will teach you the other 2 rules of multiplying powers. That's it. Have a great day.